Okay, so where was I? Yes, so we're gonna so in a nutshell, subnetting is borrowing bits from the host portion and adding it to the network portion. So you have more network IDs, so you can assign these network IDs to different subnets. All right. So, and there are other parts. So what we did in previous lab, we subnetted uh, a Class C IP address. In a Class C IP address, you have more. You have 8 bits for the host and 24 bits for the network ID. Okay. So, and then you have Class B IP addresses with 16 prefix, meaning there are 16-bit for the host and 16-bit for the network ID. So 16-bit gives you the total number of, let's see how many bit it gives you. 16 bits. So if you go to this scientific, 16 to the power of 2 no. So 16 bits give you 65,536 hosts. You should never have 65,536 hosts in one network. It's impossible. It won't even function. So if you have a Class B network ID with 16 prefix, you must subnet it. And the best way to subnet it is not borrowing from the third octet, like here it says, because if you borrow from the third octet, number of subnet gives you 2, and number of hosts 3,200, 32,766. That's still a lot of hosts in one network. So in real world, you don't borrow just one bit from the host ID. Actually, what you do is you borrow the whole octet. This is more common, like this 24. So you borrow the whole octet, 8 bits, that gives you 256 network, right? And with 254 hosts in each network. So actually, subnetting a Class B address or 16 prefix address in real world is much easier. Okay, because it's just turned into a Class C IP address. So if you ever see a Class B IP address with 24 prefix, meaning the first 3 octets are belong to the network, that means that network is subnetted and the whole 8 bits are uh, 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 taken. The whole third octet is being used to create subnets. So this is the more common approach. Create create 100 subnets with a slash 16 prefix. So if you want to create 100 subnets, just borrow the bits until you reach 100. Okay, so if you borrow 8 bits, you get 256 network. If you borrow 7 bits, you get 128 bit 28 networks. Okay, but like I said, the common practice is borrow the whole 8 bits, create 256 network with 254 hosts in each network, because you should not have more than 254 hosts in one subnet, because the network will become very slow. And then the same way you can well, creating subnet is all about just taking bits from the host portion. The less bit you take, the less network you will create. The more bit you will take, the more network you will create. So here are different example. I just want you to go through on your own because I already explained it. Okay. And here you create 1000 subnets. I don't know, if you create 1000 subnets, you have to take class A IP address. Okay, and you can borrow from the host, because here you have, how many hosts you have? You have 24 bits for the host ID. Okay, 24 bits gives you how many hosts? That gives you 16,777,216. No way you will have all these hosts in one network. So class A address, what you do is you just take the whole 16 bits and turn into the network ID. Okay, so this is, so probably you will encounter many network that starts from 10, but the subnet mask you will see is 24. Okay, I often use it in the private network. It starts from 10, but the subnet mask is 24. Okay, because I use all I use 16 bits for the network ID to convert into a multiple subnet. So here you can watch this video, subnet across multiple octets. Okay, it explains. And all right, so there's a lab, calculate IP version for subnets. I'm gonna give you this lab later on. Let's see. There are other topics I'd like to convert. Okay, subnetting private versus public addresses. Public addresses are more important to subnet because public addresses are routed on the internet. So for that reason, they have to follow certain rules. I told you about the private addresses. There's no reason to go to borrowing bits from the host ID and add it to the network ID. Private network, you can just come up with your own subnet IDs. Okay. For example, what I do is I create a subnet starting from 10. So I could do this 10, 10.0.0.1, 10.0.0.2, 10.0.0.3, just like this, or 0.1 and 0.0, 0.2 and 0.0. So you can just come up with your own subnet. You don't need to borrow from the network ID. You can also use the all three bits in the network, all the first three octet to be part of the network portion. Okay, and then you will. So these are easier to subnet. Now keep that in mind. So let's say this is one of the network. So this is the company's internal network, meaning LAN. And these are the servers that need to be accessed by the public, right? In this case, you need the public addresses assigned to these servers. These here you can assign private addresses, right? Because these computer are not needed to be accessed from the internet, so they can use private addresses. But these are the servers. For example, it could be a web server or email server or any server like e-commerce, running e-commerce application where customer needed to access those servers, so they need to be assigned public addresses. And where do you get these public addresses? Through the ISP. Okay. And if you're ISPs, you get the IP address from the registry, internet registry of your region. Okay. And I explained it before, a DMZ, it's a network that is separate. It's part of your network. This is your organization network, but it's separated from your local area network for the security. And here you see is connected through firewall. Later on, I don't know, you'll probably learn how to configure firewall, how to configure a Cisco router as a firewall. All right, so here's the common topology. So how do you subnet? Here's the common topology with 5 sites. So you have corporate headquarters, require 4 public IP version 4 addresses. You have branch, require 25 public IP version 4 addresses, right? And then you have another branch, and another branch. So 5 sites. So what you can do is, in this case, you need class B IP addresses, public IP address, sorry, and then you subnet into multiple networks. Like I said, what is the maximum number of hosts do you need? 40. So what you can do is you can, as I said before, you never, you should not, okay, I shouldn't use the word never. You should not have more than 256 hosts in one network. So what you can do is you can take 172 network and take 8 bits to subnet. So if you take 8 bits to subnet, what do we get? So 8 to the power of 2, we got 64. So sorry, 2 to the power of 8, we take 8 bits from the class B network, we got 256 network. How many hosts we will have in this network? So it's a class B network, right? So originally there are 16 bits for the host, but we have taken 8 bits to create 256 network. How many hosts we will have in this network? Anybody? How do you calculate the number of hosts?
254.
254. How did you come up with that, Jury?
Well, 8 bits are left. 2 to the power of 8 minus 2.
Exactly. So it's the same. So if we took out of 16, we took 8 for the network. We have 256 network. We have 8 bits left. The same thing, 2 to the power of 8, 256. But the first the first address and the last address cannot be used, because the first address is the network ID and the last address is the host ID. Okay. So for that, so we have 256 minus 2, 254 hosts. So in this network, we can easily use this address and use the whole 8 bits to come up with the network ID. Okay, so let's do it. Have you guys used a subnet calculator before? Okay, SolarWind is a company that make networking software. They also have a very good subnet calculator, but there's an online subnet calculator as well. I'll show you. Okay, here, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where's the okay, here. So this is an online subnet calculator, okay? And you will see, okay, in exam, I'm going to let you use the online subnet calculator. If there are questions in exam, I'm going to let you use the subnet calculator so you don't have to do it manually. Because like I said, I want you to learn how to do things in real world environment. In real world environment, even like if you have a job where you have to calculate subnet, you use the subnet calculator. Okay, you don't do it manually. But I'm warning you, those of you who are planning to go for CCNA certification, in the certification exam, you have to do to solve question about subnetting, and you're not allowed to use online subnet calculator. Actually, you won't have access to any online resource. So those of you who are planning to take CCN exam, you have to learn manually how to calculate subnet. But here, so IP subnet calculator here, so it's very easy. So this is how it works. So this is IP version 4 subnet calculator. So if we take a look at this topology, okay, so how many networks we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 networks. So we need at least 5 network, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take all, and the original IP address is 172.16.0.0. Okay. So in the subnet 172.16.0. So here 172.16.0.0. Okay. Now, like I said, the best thing is if you're subnetting a class B IP address, you take the whole 16-bit, okay, to sorry, you take the whole 8 bits from the third octet to come up with your subnetwork. So you will have 256 network with 254 hosts in each network, which is good enough. So here 24 hosts is, so we'll choose 24 bits, right? Okay. And it will give you all the network IDs and the host IDs in each network. And it will also give you the broadcast ID. Okay, so calculate and okay, so here you have network ID is 116.0. So you have 16.0.12, 16.0.254. Okay, your total number of hosts 256, number of usable hosts 254, and the subnet mask is 255, 255, 255.0, which is the original, it's like a class C IP address. Okay, and okay, for some reason this calculator did not give me the list of, okay, I'm gonna use another calculator after. Hold on. Use the not. It did not give me the list of IP addresses with the subnet mask. Okay, maybe it was a different, it has changed. But if you want to see the list of IP addresses, all the IP addresses with the subnet mask, here is the solar wind. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so this is a SolarWinds sub. It's a free calculator. It's not online. You have to install on your computer. Okay, and what you do, and this is actually much better. Okay, because it gives you the list of all the IP addresses and the all the host ID and the network ID. Okay, so here classful subnet calculator, if we do the same thing, so 172.16.0.0, this is the network IP address 172.16.0.0. Okay, and we choose how many number of subnets we need. Mask bits 24. Okay, and so it gives host bits 8, so 8 bits we have left. 200 number of subnet 256, hosts per subnet 254, and if you click generate, and it gives you the list of all the subnets. 172.16, that's the first subnet, and these the IP addresses, the ranges of IP addresses in each subnet, and this is the broadcast ID. Okay, so this is very easy. So this is first subnet, and it goes up until 255, 254, 255. Okay, so this is how you can calculate your network IDs and subnetting. Have you guys used this subnet calculator before?
No.
Yeah. So okay, you know what? I'm gonna put this on my shared drive. Okay, subnet calculator. You can download from there, because if you download from SolarWinds, you have to create an account. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna upload to my shared drive. But there are online subnet calculator as well. But I don't know, these online subnet calculator always changes. Okay, so this is the best actually. Okay, so I'm gonna put this on my shared drive, the shared drive in Google Classroom, and you can, or maybe I'll try to upload on what do you call Netacat as well. Anyway, I will make it available. It's all right. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the same thing. All right, so this is how you can create subnet. The thing is, you can use the calculator just like you use calculator to do multiplication, division. It's just, even in order to use the calculator, you have to understand the concept. That's what I told you. Understanding the fundamental and then understanding the concepts are very, very important. It's everything. Once you understand that, you have tools. You don't have to memorize the commands. You don't have to memorize even subnetting. You can use the calculator, but what you need to know is the key about subnetting is, why do you have to create subnets? How do you create subnets? What criteria you use to create subnet? And as I told you, based on security needs, based on application that you're using, you separate the user that use very resource intense applitions. So also you create a subnet for your wireless network. Okay, because you should not have the wireless network in the same network as your wired network. So this is so once you know why you need to create the subnets, then The other part is actually easy. So if you have to create 5 subnets, you just borrow bits from the host portion. That gives you at least 5. You will never get the exact same amount. You just have to go over. Okay. And then you just so once you created your subnet, so here when I created the IP network, right, with the IP calculator, I have all my subnets. Then all I have to do is just assign this network ID to each network. So the first network is 16.0, right? The second network is 0.1. And no, this network is 0.64, 0.192, 1.64. And all these network I took from the list, the list of the network that that was generated by the subnet calculator. Okay. And then we assign these IP addresses to each network. But you have to remember that if you choose this network, 172.16.0.64, all the hosts in this network should be in the range of 64 network. Okay, like here. So where's the 64 network? Again, I have to keep switching. So where's the 64 network? The 64 network is here. This is so the IP address should be 64.1 to 64.254. So in this range, you cannot assign 65.1 or 65.254 to this network. You have to assign the IP address that is in that range. So okay, there's another technique called variable length subnet mask. What happened is in your network, you could have different subnet masks because sometimes you have to, let's say if you are connected to the public network, the subnet mask would be different than the private network. Okay, because this is your private network. So this is called variable length subnet mask. So you will have different subnet mask on your network. Usually you have only one subnet mask, but in today's network, because you're connected to the public network as well, you could have a network subnet mask for the private network different than the public network. Okay. So here, if you have host on multiple network and each network could have different subnet mask. If one network is has less hosts than the other, so each network could have different subnet mask. So in that case, you have what you have to do is you have to take one subnet and further subnet it again. Anyway, this VLSM, I'm not going to give you any question about VLSM in the exam. It's advanced topic, and I think it's premature to discuss this now. Okay, because they add this topic, in my opinion, very early. Okay, you also need to know a lot of other things before you actually learn the VLSM. Okay, but those of you who are going ahead, you can go over VLSM. So when you're planning your address assignment, you have to have uh, IP address for each end user. Okay, and end user are computers, tablets, I don't know, mobile devices, also printers, and you have to have addresses for your each server. Okay, And any server that are accessible from the internet, you have to have an IP address for that. Intermediary devices, for example, routers and switches, you have to have addresses for routers, each interface. And if you want to manage your switch from a remote location, you have to assign an IP address to the switch as well. Okay, so when you're coming up your IP address assignment or your subnetting, calculate all these addresses. Remember, when you're calculating addresses, you have to come up with the maximum number of IP addresses, right? It says maximum host ID you need 40. So those hosts are all those hosts, 40 host ID includes end user client, server and peripherals, internet servers, and intermediary devices as well. So you need IP addresses for all these devices and for each router interface. Okay.